From its explosive death scene to its million-dollar resurrection, Han's iconic orange and black Mazda RX-7 has a behind-the-scenes story that's even wilder than the film itself. 9 cars were built, only 2 survived, and the crew had to destroy tires, break transmissions, and even violate import laws to bring this rotary-powered beast to life. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about the Fast and Furious. Tokyo Drift's Mazda RX-7. Fact 1. The original RX-7 was red. When you picture Han's legendary Mazda RX-7 from Tokyo Drift, that striking orange and black paint job is probably the first thing that comes to mind. But here's something most fans don't know. The car wasn't always that color. The original show car that Universal Studios purchased from Valeside was actually painted in a completely different shade, and it looked nothing like what we saw on screen. Back in 2005, the production team for Tokyo Drift was scouting for the perfect cars to feature in their movie, and they made their way to the Tokyo Auto Salon, which is basically Japan's most prestigious car show where tuning companies showcase their wildest builds. That's where they spotted the Valeside Fortune RX-7 sitting on display, and it immediately caught their attention because of its aggressive wide-body kit and jaw-dropping presence. The car had been built by Valeside specifically to show off their Fortune body kit, which was one of the most extravagant and detailed aftermarket kits available for the third-generation RX-7 platform. But here's the thing. When Valeside first built that car and brought it to the Tokyo Auto Salon, it was painted in a dark red color, sometimes described as a brownish red or maroon shade. The production team knew the car had incredible potential, but they also knew that dark red wouldn't pop on camera the way they needed it to for a high-energy street racing movie. So after purchasing the car directly from Valeside, Universal Studios made the decision to completely repaint it using House of Color Sunset Pearl Orange with high-gloss black accents, creating that iconic two-tone look that became one of the most recognizable paint schemes in automotive movie history. The transformation from red to orange wasn't just a minor touch-up either. It was a full professional respray that gave the car its signature vibrant appearance. That bold orange color became so tied to the character of Han and the movie itself that most people assumed the car was always that color, never realizing it started its life as a completely different shade on the show circuit in Japan. Fact 2. It won Grand Prix before fame. Before Han's Mazda RX-7 ever drifted across movie screens in The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift, it was already a champion in the world of Japanese car culture. In 2005, Valeside CEO Hironao Yokomaku unveiled his latest creation at the Tokyo Auto Salon, which is basically the biggest and most prestigious automotive tuning show in Japan. The car he brought wasn't just another modified RX-7. It was a complete transformation that showcased Valeside's brand new Fortune body kit, and the judges were blown away by what they saw. The RX-7 took home the Grand Prix award, which is the highest honor given at the entire show, beating out hundreds of other heavily modified cars from Japan's top tuning companies. This wasn't some small achievement either, because the Tokyo Auto Salon attracts the absolute best builders and designers in the automotive world, and winning the top prize there is like winning an Oscar in the movie industry. Yokomaku had designed the car to blend supercar aesthetics with elements of Japanese heritage, and the judges recognized it as something truly special. What makes this even more interesting is that Valeside built this RX-7 specifically as a show car to demonstrate what their Fortune body kit could do. It was painted in a dark red color at the time and featured all the wild modifications that would later make it famous, including the massive wide-body panels, custom headlights, and that distinctive rear window design. The car was meant to travel to various auto shows around the world to promote Valeside's products and generate interest in their tuning packages. When Universal Studios scouts attended the Tokyo Auto Salon looking for cars to feature in their upcoming movie, they immediately spotted the Grand Prix winning RX-7 and knew they had found something special. The studio purchased the car directly from Valeside, repainted it in the now iconic orange and black color scheme, and turned a show-winning champion into a movie star that would become even more famous than anyone could have predicted. Fact 3. 9 built, Only 2 survived. When Universal Studios decided to make The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, they knew they needed multiple copies of Han's iconic Mazda RX-7 to handle all the intense filming requirements. What most fans don't realize is just how many cars were actually built and how few of them made it through production in one piece. According to Craig Lieberman, who served as the technical advisor for the first 3 Fast and Furious films, Universal commissioned a total of 9 Valeside RX-7 replicas specifically for Tokyo Drift, and by the time filming wrapped, only 2 of these cars survived. The reason so many cars were needed comes down to the brutal reality of filming a movie centered around drifting and high-speed chase sequences. Each car served a different purpose during production. Some were built as exact replicas of the hero car for close-up shots and static scenes, while others were mechanical duplicates designed to withstand the punishment of actual drifting and stunt work. The production team shipped 3 of these RX-7s to the United States for filming in California, while 2 remained in Japan to be used for scenes that absolutely had to be shot on location in Tokyo. The cars were split between right-hand drive and left-hand drive configurations, with 2 being right-hand drive and 3 being left-hand drive, depending on what each particular scene required. What destroyed so many of these cars wasn't just regular wear and tear. The drift sequences were incredibly demanding on the vehicles, especially since professional drivers like Rod Millen and Samuel Hubinette were pushing these cars to their absolute limits. The intense driving resulted in catastrophic mechanical failures throughout production, with the crew breaking no less than 7 differentials and having to swap out 3 complete transmissions across the fleet of cars. The combination of high-speed impacts, aggressive drifting, and the general chaos of Hollywood stunt work meant that 7 of the 9 RX-7s were completely totaled by the end of filming. The 2 that survived were eventually shipped back to Japan and sold through a JDM car broker called New Era Imports in Chiba, where they became highly sought-after collector's items. Fact 4. Samurai armor inspired the headlights. When you look at Han's RX-7 in Tokyo Drift, one of the most striking features is the custom headlight design with those visible exposed screws running along the edges. Most people assume those screws are just part of the aggressive styling that Valeside is known for, but there's actually a much deeper cultural meaning behind them. Valeside CEO Hironao Yokomaku intentionally designed those exposed screws to mimic the appearance of traditional samurai warrior armor, creating a direct visual connection between Japan's ancient warrior heritage and modern street racing culture. The exposed screws are meant to look like the metal rivets and plates that held together the elaborate armor worn by samurai warriors centuries ago, with each screw placement carefully thought out to recreate that same aesthetic. Yokomaku's vision for the Fortune body kit was never just about making the RX-7 look aggressive or fast. He wanted to create what he called a Japanese supercar look that would blend modern performance styling with echoes of Japan's most honorable heritage. The headlight design was just one part of this larger artistic vision, where every element of the car was supposed to tell a story about Japanese culture and craftsmanship. The front light clusters themselves are completely custom-built around a carbon shell, housing 3 separate lamps on each side, and those visible screws running along the edges complete the samurai armor effect. It's a level of detail that most viewers would never notice while watching the movie, but it shows how much thought Valeside put into every aspect of the car's design. This wasn't just a body kit slapped onto a Mazda. It was a carefully crafted tribute to Japanese history wrapped around a rotary engine, and those headlight screws were Yokomaku's way of honoring the precision and discipline of the samurai while pushing the boundaries of modern automotive design. Fact 5. The rear was inspired by Corvette. When you look at Han's Mazda RX-7 from the back, you're actually seeing a piece of American automotive history mixed into one of the most iconic Japanese tuner cars ever built. The split rear window and several angular styling details on the Valeside Fortune body kit were directly inspired by the 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray, creating an unexpected fusion of American muscle car design and Japanese drift culture. Valeside CEO Hironao Yokomaku, the man who designed the Fortune body kit, specifically drew inspiration from the classic Corvette when shaping the RX-7's rear end. The 1963 Corvette Stingray is famous for its distinctive split rear window, a design feature that only appeared on that single model year before being discontinued. Yokomaku loved the aggressive and unique look of that divided rear glass, and he decided to incorporate a similar aesthetic into his RX-7 design. The result is that dramatic rear window treatment you see on Han's car, with its separated glass panels that give the back of the RX-7 an unmistakable silhouette. But it wasn't just the window. Yokomaku also borrowed some of the Corvette's sharp, angular body lines and incorporated them into various parts of the Fortune kit's design. His vision was to create what he called a Japanese supercar look, while still paying homage to Japan's most honorable heritage. And apparently, that vision included a nod to one of America's most legendary sports cars. The combination sounds unusual on paper, but when you see the finished product, it somehow works perfectly. The aggressive rear diffuser, the integrated spoiler, and those Corvette-inspired styling cues all come together to create something that looks unlike any other RX-7 on the planet. It's a weird piece of automotive cross-pollination that most fans never notice, but once you know about it, you can't unsee the Corvette DNA hiding in plain sight on one of Tokyo Drift's most famous cars. Fact 6. They shredded the tires on purpose. Here's something that sounds completely backwards when you first hear it. The crew working on Tokyo Drift actually had to make the RX-7 worse at gripping the road before they could film any of the drifting scenes. The car was built with a 500 horsepower engine and all kinds of performance upgrades, which you'd think would be perfect for a movie about drifting, but it turned out to be exactly the opposite of what they needed. The problem was that the RX-7 had too much grip and too much traction, which meant it didn't want to slide around corners the way it was supposed to in the movie. Professional drift drivers Rod Millen and Samuel Houbinet were behind the wheel for the action sequences, and even with all their skill and experience, they were having a really hard time getting the car to break loose and drift properly. The massive rear tires that looked so aggressive and impressive on camera were actually working against them because they were gripping the pavement too well. So the production team came up with a solution that would make any car enthusiast cringe. They deliberately wore down the rear tires until they were almost completely bald. They literally shredded the tread off the tires on purpose, reducing the amount of rubber that could grab onto the road surface. This gave the RX-7 less traction in the rear, which is exactly what you need to initiate and maintain a drift. With the worn-down tires, the professional drivers could finally get the car sideways and keep it sliding through corners the way the script required. It might sound like they were destroying expensive equipment for no reason, but in reality, it was a calculated decision to make the car perform the way it needed to for filming. The crew knew that having bald tires would make the drifting sequences look authentic and dramatic on screen, even if it meant going against every safety rule and maintenance practice that normally applies to high-performance cars. Fact 7. 7 differentials were destroyed during filming. When you watch Tokyo Drift and see those perfectly executed drift sequences with Han's orange and black RX-7 sliding smoothly through the streets, what you're really watching is the result of absolute mechanical carnage behind the scenes. The production team went through 7 complete differentials and 3 entire transmissions just to capture those iconic drifting moments. And the damage wasn't spread across all 9 cars that were built for the film. It was concentrated on just the handful of vehicles that were actually used for the high-speed action sequences. Universal Studios brought in some of the best professional drivers in the world to handle the intense drifting work, including Rod Millen and Samuel Houbinet, who were both champion-level Formula Drift competitors at the time. These weren't just stunt drivers pretending to drift, they were legitimate professional drifters who knew how to push cars to their absolute limits, and that's exactly what the production needed to make the movie look authentic. But there was a problem with using actual professional drivers who could truly drift at competition level. They were so good at what they did that they completely destroyed the mechanical components that weren't designed to handle that kind of sustained abuse. The differentials, which are the crucial parts that allow the rear wheels to spin at different speeds during turns and slides, simply couldn't withstand the constant sideways action and extreme angles that Millen and Houbinet were putting them through during filming. Every time they initiated a drift, held it through a corner, or transitioned from one drift to another, they were putting enormous stress on these components. The same went for the transmissions, which had to constantly shift gears under high RPM conditions while the car was sliding sideways. Dennis McCarthy, who served as Universal's vehicle coordinator for the film, confirmed that between the driving styles of these two professional champions, the mechanical failures became a regular occurrence throughout production, requiring the crew to keep spare parts on hand and mechanics ready to swap out broken components between takes. Fact 8. 90% was filmed in Los Angeles. When you watch The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift, you're seeing sleek cars sliding through the neon-lit streets of Japan's capital city, right? Well, not exactly. Despite the movie's title and its reputation as the franchise's most authentic glimpse into Japanese car culture, approximately 90% of Tokyo Drift was actually filmed in Los Angeles, California. The production team went to incredible lengths to make Southern California look like Tokyo, and most viewers never suspected a thing. The decision to film in Los Angeles wasn't about laziness or lack of ambition. Director Justin Lin and the production team faced serious logistical challenges when trying to secure permits to film in Tokyo. Japanese regulations around foreign film crews are notoriously strict, and getting permission to shut down streets for high-speed drift sequences was nearly impossible. Rather than abandon the project's Tokyo setting entirely, the filmmakers got creative with movie magic. The famous parking lot drift sequence where Sean learns to control Han's RX-7 is a perfect example. That scene looks like it's happening in a Japanese parking structure, complete with Japanese characters painted on the walls, but it was actually shot in a California parking lot. The production design team simply added Japanese signage and visual elements to transform the American location. This wasn't just limited to one or two scenes either. The majority of the film's most iconic RX-7 moments, from the early drift battles to the high-speed chases through city streets, were all captured in Los Angeles. To pull this off convincingly, the production used 768 visual effects shots throughout the movie. These effects help blend the California footage with actual Tokyo establishing shots and background plates. The RX-7 driving scenes were heavily included in that visual effects count, with digital enhancements adding Japanese storefronts, street signs, and other details that sold the illusion. Only about 10% of the film was actually shot on location in Japan, mostly for establishing shots and scenes that didn't require complex vehicle work or street closures. Fact 9. Forced to return under import rules. After all the drifting, crashes, and explosive stunts were finally wrapped up, the two surviving Mazda RX-7 hero cars faced an unexpected problem that had nothing to do with Hollywood and everything to do with federal law. These weren't American spec vehicles that could simply be parked in a garage somewhere in California. They were right-hand drive, Japanese market cars that had been brought into the United States on temporary bonds specifically for movie production purposes. Under U.S. import regulations, particularly the 25-year rule, these vehicles couldn't legally remain in the country once filming was complete. The law states that foreign market vehicles that don't meet U.S. safety and emissions standards can only be permanently imported after they reach 25 years of age. And since these RX-7s were from the early 1990s, they were still years away from qualifying. Universal Studios had no choice but to pack up these iconic movie cars and ship them right back across the Pacific to Japan, where they originally came from. It's somewhat ironic when you think about it. These cars traveled thousands of miles to star in a movie called Tokyo Drift, spent most of their screen time pretending to race through Tokyo while actually being in Los Angeles, and then had to make the long journey back home because American law wouldn't let them stay. The cars eventually ended up in the hands of New Era Imports, a JDM car broker based in Chiba, Japan, where they resurfaced a few years after the movie's release. One of them would later be sold to a UK-based owner in 2008, and that same car would go on to fetch over $1.2 million at auction in 2025. So while Han's RX-7 met a fiery end on screen, the real cars survived, but couldn't escape the reality of international import regulations that sent them back across the ocean. Fact 10. Sung Kang owned the same model. Before Sung Kang ever stepped foot on the set of Tokyo Drift, he actually owned the exact same car that his character Han would later drive in the movie. Back in 1994, right after Kang graduated from college, his parents showed up with a surprise gift that was supposed to change the direction of his entire life. They bought him a brand new 1993 Mazda RX-7, painted in red, completely factory stock with no modifications at all. The catch was that this wasn't just a graduation present, it was actually a bribe. Kang's parents wanted him to give up his dream of becoming an actor and go to law school instead, and they thought a cool sports car might be enough to convince him to make that choice. In interviews years later, Kang remembered the moment his dad pulled up with the car and told him he didn't even know what it was, just that it looked like a Jaguar and seemed expensive enough to be impressive. For a young guy in his early 20s who had been taking the bus everywhere, this rotary-powered sports car was absolutely incredible. Kang described it as the coolest thing he had ever owned at that point in his life. But there was a problem that his parents didn't anticipate. Kang couldn't actually afford to keep the car running. The insurance costs were way too high for someone working odd jobs while trying to break into acting, and when the turbos eventually went out, he realized he couldn't afford the repairs either. So instead of driving it, he just parked the RX-7 in his garage and went back to riding the bus to auditions and back to school. He never did go to law school, and his parents never really admitted they were wrong about his career choice, but as Kang joked in one interview, they definitely cashed the check when he made it big. More than a decade later, when director Justin Lin cast him as Han in Tokyo Drift and put him behind the wheel of a modified RX-7 with the Veilside body kit, Kang said it felt like the car had been following him through his entire journey, connecting his personal life to his professional success in the strangest way possible. Fact 11. Han's role was originally for a rapper. When director Justin Lin was putting together The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift. Back in 2005, Han's character looked very different on the page than what audiences eventually saw on screen. The role was originally written as a brief one-off cameo designed specifically for a rapper to make a quick appearance in what was expected to be an almost straight-to-DVD release. In this initial version, the character would simply show up, toss his car keys to the main character Sean Boswell, played by Lucas Black, and that would be the extent of his involvement in the film. It was meant to be a flash of cool factor rather than any kind of meaningful part in the story. However, as production progressed and Lin worked more closely with actor Sung Kang, who had previously played a character named Han in Lin's earlier independent film Better Luck Tomorrow from 2002, something shifted. Lin saw potential in expanding this throwaway role into something much more substantial, and he brought Kang on board to reimagine the character entirely. What started as a glorified cameo transformed into one of the most emotionally affecting and beloved characters in the entire Fast and Furious franchise. Kang's portrayal brought what critics described as a more delicate touch than the Fast movies had seen before or since, with his laid-back cool inspired by classic actors like Paul Newman and Steve McQueen, combined with an added quirk of constantly snacking that became one of Han's signature traits. The expansion of Han's role proved to be one of the best decisions the franchise ever made. His popularity with audiences was so unexpected and overwhelming that the character was brought back for multiple subsequent films, including Fast and Furious, Fast 5, and Fast and Furious 6, even though he had supposedly died in Tokyo Drift. The franchise eventually had to create an entire timeline restructure just to keep Han alive for more movies, turning what was meant to be a quick rapper cameo into a cornerstone character of the series. Fact 12. The body kit adds nearly a foot. When you look at Han's Mazda RX-7 in Tokyo Drift, it's immediately obvious that this isn't just any stock sports car with a few cosmetic upgrades slapped on, and the numbers behind the Veilside Fortune body kit reveal just how dramatically this car was transformed. The kit added almost 8 inches to the car's total width, taking it from the stock 68.9 inches all the way up to 80 inches wide, which fundamentally changed the entire presence and silhouette of the vehicle. To put that in perspective, the car became nearly a foot wider than it originally was, with the front and rear fenders extended by 220 millimeters on each side to accommodate the aggressive stance and massive wheels that became such an iconic part of the car's look. What makes this transformation even more remarkable is that only two body panels from the original Mazda remained completely untouched during the conversion process, which were the roof and the rear tailgate, meaning that virtually everything else you see on the car's exterior is custom veil-side work. The doors were completely redesigned with large air intakes carved into their upper portions to feed cooling air to the rear brakes, while the front bumper received an integrated carbon fiber lip, and the rear got a diffuser section that added 90 millimeters to the car's overall length. One automotive magazine that tested the car described its proportions as being shaped like a postage stamp because of how dramatically wide it had become compared to its length, creating this squat, aggressive appearance that looked unlike anything else on the road at the time. The 19-inch Andrew Premier Series Racing Evolution 5 wheels were specially sized to fill out the massive fenders, measuring 12 inches wide at the rear with a deep dished effect that emphasized just how much real estate the body kit had created. And the whole package was finished with Pirelli P Zero Nero tires that could barely fit under the stock RX-7's wheel wells. Fact 13, it sold for $1.2 million in 2025. In July of 2025, one of the two surviving hero cars from Tokyo Drift crossed the auction block at the Bonham's Goodwood Festival of Speed, and the final hammer price shocked the automotive world. The iconic orange and black Mazda RX-7 sold for £911,000, which converts to approximately $1.224 million, instantly becoming the most expensive Mazda road car ever sold at auction. This wasn't just a record for the RX-7 or even for movie cars from the Fast and Furious franchise in general. It was a milestone that proved how deeply this particular vehicle had embedded itself into car culture history. The pre-sale estimate from Bonham's had been set at £250,000 to £350,000, which seemed bold but reasonable for a movie car with such significant provenance. But two determined collectors turned the auction into an intense bidding war that sent the price soaring nearly triple the highest estimate. What makes this sale even more remarkable is that this specific RX-7, identified by its chassis number FD3S111461, was not used for any of the film's dramatic drift sequences or high-speed chases, meaning it survived production in relatively pristine condition compared to the 7 other cars that were destroyed during filming. The car had been purchased directly from New Era Imports in Japan back in 2008 and shipped to the United Kingdom, where it spent the next 17 years carefully stored, driven only in dry conditions, and maintained by rotary engine specialists who kept it in excellent mechanical order. The record-breaking sale put the Tokyo Drift RX-7 ahead of other famous Fast and Furious cars like Paul Walker's 1994 Toyota Supra from the first film, which sold for $550,000 back in 2021, though it fell just short of Walker's 2000 Nissan Skyline R34 GTR, which fetched $1.357 million in 2023. Fact 14. The NOS system was never connected. If you look closely at Han's Mazda RX-7 in Tokyo Drift, you'll spot a polished nitrous oxide bottle mounted prominently above the driveshaft tunnel, right behind the gear shifter where everyone can see it. It looks ready to deliver that extra burst of speed at the push of a button, but here's the weird part: that NOS system was never actually connected or functional during filming. The shiny bottle was purely there for show, sitting as nothing more than an expensive prop in one of the movie's most iconic cars. According to sources close to the production, this decision was made as a direct safety precaution after what happened to Dominic Toretto in the very first Fast and Furious film. If you remember that scene, Dom's Dodge Charger had a nitrous system that malfunctioned spectacularly, causing the car to flip and nearly kill him in a fiery crash. That moment became one of the most memorable sequences in the franchise, but it also served as a wake-up call for the production team about the very real dangers of working with nitrous oxide systems on movie sets. When it came time to build the RX-7 fleet for Tokyo Drift, the filmmakers wanted to maintain that authentic street racing aesthetic, which meant including all the visual elements that fans would expect to see, like turbo kits, intercoolers, and of course, a nitrous bottle. But they weren't willing to risk another accident or mechanical failure with a live nitrous system, especially considering how many high-speed drift sequences and stunts the cars would be performing. So they installed the polished nitrous express bottle purely for appearances, making sure it looked completely legitimate on camera while keeping the actual hookup disconnected and safe. The bottle remains in the surviving hero car to this day, still mounted in the same position but never once flowing any nitrous oxide through Han's rotary engine. Fact 15. Production labels still mark the car. If you ever get the chance to see one of the two surviving Tokyo Drift RX-7s in person, you'll notice something really cool that most movie cars don't have anymore. This particular hero car that's sold at auction still has all the original production markings from when it was being used on set back in 2005 and 2006. Throughout the vehicle, you can find multiple labels that read number 71 Hans in different locations, and these weren't just slapped on randomly. The production crew used these labels to identify which car belonged to which character during filming, since they had 9 nearly identical RX-7s being used at the same time for different types of shots. The number 71 refers to the internal production number that Universal Studios assigned to this specific vehicle, while Hans is obviously a reference to the character Han Lu, played by Sung Kang. You can spot these labels on the passenger door, in the engine bay when you pop the hood, and on the scuttle panel near the windshield. The fact that these markings are still intact nearly 20 years later shows just how carefully this particular car was preserved after filming wrapped. Most movie cars get stripped down and repainted once production ends, with all the behind-the-scenes markers and identification removed before they're sold off or stored away. But this RX-7 also has other telltale signs of its Hollywood history beyond just the character labels. If you look closely at various parts of the body, you can still see marks and small indentations left behind by the camera mounts that were attached during filming for those close-up interior shots and dramatic exterior angles. These mounting points were necessary to capture all those smooth tracking shots of Han cruising through the streets, and the crew had to carefully position cameras on different parts of the car's body to get the perfect angles. The current owner even received full documentation proving the car's journey to and from the United States for filming, making it one of the most thoroughly authenticated movie cars from the entire Fast and Furious franchise.